Okay, welcome everybody to this episode in our series of 10-minute webcasts on Bitesize Agility. And this episode, we're going to be looking at remote working. And I am privileged to have with me Kate Brett Goldman, who is the CEO and founder of Cybermaniacs and is the doyen of the cybersecurity community. Kate, it is marvelous to have you with us. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, remote working and cybersecurity, there's been quite a lot of talk about this recently, so it seems sort of evident that cybersecurity has not been the first thing that people think about when they start to work remotely. Is that what you're seeing in the marketplace, or are people thinking ahead?
Well, I think in terms of this pandemic or the switch that we've all had to make almost instantaneously, it feels like forever ago, doesn't it? It's only been a few weeks, but for God, it feels like months or years ago now when I start talking about, March. But I think that many organizations, it really depends on where they were in terms of their digital transformation and where they were in terms of their security maturity, whether they were set up for success in the first place. So in terms of were organizations ready? Do they think of security first? It's challenging because this is a concept that security is having a problem with anyways, which is what do we do with the perimeter now that the perimeter is everywhere? Right. What do we do with our data now that our data is everywhere? How do we look at access? How do we look at identity? How do we look at securing everything? Where are our crown jewels? And all this stuff kind of gets jumbled up into this Gordian knot that you have to untangle while at the same time digitally transforming and moving all your business processes to the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the hard thing is that I think some organizations were able to switch and adapt and be more, honestly, competitively advantageous and be more productive and actually look at some of their systems and processes to have the collaboration necessary to change at scale, at pace, in a crisis. And then there were organizations that weren't able to do that because, all of our logistical files on our supply chain are on a local server. So those are the kind of things is that, there is remote working and then there's what we're doing now, which is not the same thing. But for us, at the Cybermaniacs, it comes down to you have to have the security and the technology in place. That's table stakes. And then now what I think is becoming more evident because of this change crisis is the people are the table stakes too now. And that's always been part of agile thinking. Yep. But your people need to be agile in the way that they are secure. And so most training and most ways that we deal with, governance training, security training, et cetera, these days is you should know the definition of malware. Well, that doesn't give people the ability to have the context to, understand that, and people's security posture changes on where they are in terms of a environment and cultural context. So I think, this is where we say, what's the capability? And then how do you actually get there?
Right. So this is clearly cybersecurity, if we use that as a sort of catch-all term, has moved from being something functional in an organization to being something structural. So this, in a sense, needs to be designed into the way the organization actually works. And of course, as you quite rightly say, the people are at the root of that. Is that, because for many organizations, most, I guess, that will be retrofitting that structural design for cybersecurity with people. Is training a big enough word for what needs to be done?
Oh God, I love that. It's a great question because one of the challenges we have as a company is I hate the word training. I refuse to use it in our marketing and then our SEO stinks. So the challenge is you're addressing it is actually perfect because training has so long been about short-term knowledge objectives that is focused on a very specific piece of knowledge acquisition, right? And that's not having a team be okay with remote working, knowing how to do it well from a leadership standpoint, and then being able to be secure while you do it. Zoom bombing, for instance,
absolutely.
Endemic right now, and people are sharing stuff all over the place because they can't get access and we don't know what to do. And so that's the thing where you say that isn't about training, right? So the once a year, one size fits all thing that we've done, not just on cybersecurity PS, by the way, on a whole host of business topics, I think needs to come into a continual approach. And the continual approach is hard because most, especially large-scale organizations, want to build the asset, want to release it at scale, and then want everyone to take it so they have consistency and quality, and they tick the box and we're done. But if we're talking about an adaptive business, and we're talking about adaptive people and adaptive cybersecurity, then your training needs to be continual so it keeps your people going all the time. But if you want your people to, we like to use the term, if you want to turn your people into continuously adapting cyber defense agents, fancy, right? But if you want them to be able to go, oh, that's no, this situation, I'm at the coffee shop, I'm at work, I'm on the road, I'm at a hotel, I'm traveling internationally, whatever it is, if you want them to adapt with a security culture and a mindset, then that isn't created from one e-learning training course. And that's the same thing with any large-scale cultural change or any large-scale business change. We have to find a way to break things down into smaller pieces and then deliver them in a relevant context so that people can have the tools they need when they need them.
So this is going beyond, in a sense, going beyond the mindset to create a set of habitual behaviors that people have. And the idea of feeding people things as and when they need them is this, what's this phrase, learning in the flow of work, in a sense, and almost learning in real time. I'm in a situation, this has happened. How do I deal with this? Having on tap almost, and maybe even, if it's AI related, having things that can identify threats before the people do and do something about them. Is that a nirvana? Is that something that's even possible in the structures that we've got?
Yeah, in this day and age, that's still a bit, I'd say, on the bleeding edge of possible, but not to the point where it can be done really well. And I think the things that, so we're playing around with some of that as we innovate at the edges, right?
Yeah.
And some of the things we're playing around with how do you reduce the time of an incident? How do you reduce, how do you get people to learn in the moment? Because that's where the memory, the retention, and the change really happens, right? So it's the same thing as if you're learning a sport and you've got the coach with you and you say you're learning golf and you take one swing and the coach goes, actually, if you just angle your body a little bit to the left and then you swing again and you nail it, like that's where our human brains are primed to go, learning moment, stick that in the back, right? If we can turn that into a digital format, if we could turn that into something that is just in time, the data is starting to be there. We're certainly starting to measure people at Cybermaniacs on some of these criteria, but then the machine learning and the AI and all the other fancy stuff on the back end that would dynamically turn that into a learning experience, not quite yet, but like, look, that's my 3-year dream. I'd love to be there. I think that's really interesting. That's
great, yeah, because that's synchronized learning, and that would be really, really interesting. Okay, so bearing in mind then that what we seek is a set of behaviors in the people, because the people, I guess, quite often quoted as the weak link in cybersecurity. A set of behaviors in the people which enables cybersecurity to be optimal. What's the best piece of advice that you would give to an organization in order to try and move along that road towards those habitual behaviors in their people?
Well, I would say the first is a mindset shift that the organization should take from top-down, push-based structural learning to something that is culturally appropriate, to things that are more bite-sized, and to find different ways to communicate with the different audiences at your business. That just being able to say one size fits all, it's efficient from a learning and development perspective, but the effectiveness at the behavioral, habit, and actual security levels is just totally not there right now. No one's even paying attention to this stuff, the terrible e-learning. So I'd say to organizations, dare I say, work cross-functionally. I know, scary. But cross-pollinate and go talk to your marketing team and be like, look, the same way that we look at customer segmentation and audiences and personas and all this wonderful stuff we do outside the company, especially if you're B2C, this is perfect. Yep. Let's turn some of that thinking internally. Have your marketing team train you on the ways to do that segmentation, and then look at different ways you could serve up training content or learning experiences to an audience in a way they want to learn it. And that's a first step. It's like a great first step to getting people engaged so that then you can get better at the behavior change part of it.
So that's a relatively straightforward, not necessarily easy, but relatively straightforward move that companies can make around cross-functionally engaging. And I like that idea of getting the marketing team to explain to people how that might be delivered. Kate, that's a really That's a really good start, I think, to this conversation, and I am sure that we'll be returning to this in future episodes for definite.
Hope so.
In the meantime, thank you very much indeed for what was a quick canter, but nevertheless an in-depth one through some of the challenges, of course, of cybersecurity and remote working. Kate Brett Goldman, CEO and founder of Cybermaniacs. Been great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Cheers.